Hi there, I'm Devin Skillion. Glad to have you watching us here on Local 4 Plus. Right now, I want to bring you an important conversation on the future of the auto industry. Top White House economic advisor Lael Brainard is sitting down for an address at the Detroit Economic Club. Let's take you there.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. My name's Steve Gregorian, President and CEO of the Detroit Economic Club. Welcome to today's very special meeting. It's a big birthday year, as you know, for the Detroit Economic Club. 90 years of incredible speakers and networking, and that tradition continues today. I especially want to welcome our DEC members. If you're not a member yet, just give me 10 seconds to convince you. Your next prospect, client, job, or best friend is right in this room. If you'd like to build your network and learn from thought leaders on our stage, invest in you and join today. You can sign up at econclub.org, and if you want to do it today on your way out, we'll give you a free event ticket you can use through December. Just stop on the way out, and we'd be happy to have you join our membership. As we get started, just kindly silence your cell phone so we don't disturb the program. And if you've been with us before, you know we always get started with a Pledge of Allegiance, so please stand and join me as we honor our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You can go ahead and be seated. This is normally where we have an invocation, but our invocators today decided you are all so perfect that you don't need any blessings today. So we'll resume that next week when we get together again. So a couple of special thank yous. First to WGR, they're doing their focus show live from today's DEC meeting, and they're right outside here. Stop by and take a look afterwards. Also, thanks to WDIV Local 4 and Lawrence Tech University for live streaming today's meeting. We've got students here today, as we always do, the courtesy of our generous corporate sponsors, and their morning already included a really great private reception with our guest speaker. I want to take a moment and let you know who's with us. We've got a group of ladies from St. Catherine High School in Wixom, compliments of Mel Brown and the MEDC. And we've got some Econ Club students from Wayne State University. Thanks to the Detroit Regional Chamber. Thank you, Glenn and Sandy. How about a round of applause to welcome the students? Thank the sponsors. Two things on your tables quickly. Our sponsor brochure. Take a look at that. I want to make sure that we recognize those sponsors. They are the reason we bring you terrific programs like we do. And if you are one of those sponsors, we say thank you from the bottom of our heart. And if you'd like to become one, our heart's even deeper. We'd love to have you talk to me about all the great benefits. Also on your table, and this is exciting, it's our seasonal lineup. And if you take a look, we've got a lot of stuff coming in October, and trust me, it's going to get even crazier. So we're here today, of course. This coming Thursday, it's our annual Young Leader Conference, and that's where we'll gather over 300 of our 21 through 39-year-old members for a day of professional development. October 2nd, I think that's next week, we'll be right here in this room on this stage. Senator Stabenow will give her exit interview. October 7th, Ali Velshi from MSNBC is out with a new book. He'll do a fireside chat with our Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson. And right back here in this room, October 15th, we will host the presidents of U of M, Michigan State, and Wayne State right here at the Masonic. So tons more on our website. Trust me, tons more to come, so get your tickets before they sell out. All right, one last thing. 90 years of speakers, and those speakers tell the history of the Detroit, or of our country. So, Lael, you now join a list of 8 others who are on our stage on this day, September 23rd. And the first of those was in 1946. So remember the year, 1946. You may not remember the name. I didn't when I looked it up, but William Gilmore at the time was editor of our local Detroit news. His speech was titled, "Will Germany Be Able to Start Another War?" In 1971, President Nixon was at the DEC on this day. In 1985, Senator Packwood from Oregon visited the DEC, and his speech was titled, "The Congressional Budget, Fact or Fiction?" And here we are 40 years later asking the same question. Lael, you and I talked, you were here once before in September 2018. It's been a quick 6 years, but today we're pleased to add you as our 9th speaker on this DEC history. So congratulations and thanks for being with us. Thank you. Finally, use your smartphone and you can be involved in today's program. We want you to take lots of pictures and share with your social media networks, but also you can submit a question for Lael for the end of the program, and you can use the QR code that you see on your table. And those questions are going to go to make our presiding officer get to work. Terry Radigan is chair of the Detroit Sports Organizing Corp. He is a DEC board member, an amazing supporter of the DEC, and to me personally, thank you, Terry. And Terry's behind many, many, many great things that happen here in our city. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Terry Radigan.
Thank you, Steve, and good afternoon, DEC board members and guests. It's a real pleasure for me to be here to introduce today's guest speakers. Lael Brainard is the 14th Director of National Economic Council and the White House National Economic Advisor. Prior to this role, she served as the Vice Chair of the Federal Reserve, Undersecretary of Treasury for International Affairs, and Deputy Director of the National Economic Council. She was also a Vice President at the Brookings Institution. It was during her time as the Federal Reserve Board Governor that she was here at the DEC, as Steve mentioned, in September of 2018. She received her master's and PhD in economics from Harvard and was an associate professor of economics at MIT. Our moderator today is Glenn Stevens, the Executive Director of Mich Auto and Vice President of Automotive and Mobility Initiatives at the Detroit Regional Chamber. Glenn has more than 35 years of management, strategy, and operations experience across the automotive, mobility, steel, plastics, specialty chemicals and equipment, and economic development sectors. To get us started, Lael will deliver opening remarks before her fireside chat with Glenn. So please, let's give a warm Detroit Economic Club welcome to Lael Brainard.
Well, it's a huge pleasure to be here. I want to thank Terry for the kind introduction, Glenn for moderating, Steve for inviting me. It's great to be back here at the Detroit Economic Club. It's also good to be back here in Detroit, where I had a great time working in one of my first jobs on cars. I want to thank Governor Whitmer, along with Mayor Duggan and County Executive Evans, and so many members of the Michigan Congressional Delegation for our important partnership on the auto supply chain. And today, that's what I want to focus on. I want to talk about our auto strategy and some important new steps we are announcing to advance it. But before that, I wanted to just talk about why this is so important to us. I think you all know America's auto sector is iconic. Over 3 million Americans work in this industry, and so many of those jobs, they're good-paying jobs that provide a ladder to the middle class, a sense of community, of pride, and the opportunity to work and retire with dignity. Nowhere is that more evident than right here in the proud city of Detroit and the great state of Michigan. While the auto industry wasn't born here, America quickly made it our own. Henry Ford revolutionized transportation by mass-producing a car for the common man and woman. By 1930, the Big Three had come to dominate global auto sales. The legendary Flint sit-down strike in 1936 gave rise to the United Auto Workers, and only 5 years later, there were literally hundreds of thousands of UAW members with good jobs working at the Big Three. During World War II, this industry was the heart of the arsenal of democracy, churning out bombers, tanks, and engines by the thousands. When the global financial hit our auto sector hard, both President Obama and then Vice President Biden were proud to support the Big Three and Detroit, and UAW members made important sacrifices to get this industry back on its feet. And a decade later, of course, when the pandemic hit, after decades of offshoring, shutdowns of semiconductor plants abroad and shipping disruptions led to layoffs on shop floors here and unfinished vehicles piling up in parking lots. Our automakers, our auto workers are no stranger to a tough fight, and from the earliest days, this administration has been proud to stand with them. We work tirelessly with business and labor to move semiconductors to auto plants and repair snarled logistics networks. These actions and our recovery plan enabled U.S. auto production to rebound 3 times faster than in Europe. The U.S. auto industry has now created 275,000 jobs after losing 86,000 jobs during the previous 4 years. Now we're facing another seismic shift: the growing presence of clean vehicles and the rise of connected cars, and a wave of underpriced auto exports from China. The President and the Vice President have a comprehensive strategy to make sure America's automakers and auto workers are positioned to win this future. First, we're investing in America's auto supply chain from end to end to make sure American autos remain best in class. Enabled by the bipartisan infrastructure law, we're building a domestic supply chain for batteries and a nationwide network of EV charging stations. Just last week, we announced $3 billion of additional funding for projects through battery supply chain awards, including 4 here in Michigan, to boost domestic production of critical minerals, battery components, battery manufacturing, and battery recycling. Enabled by the CHIPS and Science Act, we're making sure America again manufactures the legacy semiconductors that power cars and the advanced chips and materials that enable electric vehicles to drive further and charge faster. And the clean energy incentives in the Inflation Reduction Act are providing families with upfront rebate of up to $7,500 when they choose to buy U.S.-made EVs with U.S.-made batteries. Our domestic automotive conversion grants are providing $1.7 billion of federal grants to help retool 11 auto plants across 8 states to produce EVs and components. And Michigan is receiving more than 1/3 of that funding. These incentives have already driven historic private sector investment totaling more than $177 billion in the EV supply chain. Those investments are projected to transform the United States, for instance, into a major lithium producer, and that by the end of the decade, and to produce batteries meeting 100% of forecasted U.S. demand for EVs by 2030. We were nowhere close to those goals just 3 years ago. Second, we're taking tough, targeted action to protect our auto sector from security risks and to ensure China does not undercut our auto sector through unfair practices. Americans should drive whatever car they choose, whether gas-powered, hybrid, or electric. But if they choose to drive an EV, we want to make sure it was made in America and not in China. In order for companies to make investments in innovative new designs and models here in America, They need to be assured they won't be undercut by unfairly underpriced cars from China. And in order for consumers to be safe and secure when they drive, we need to guard against national security risks from China. China is flooding global markets with a wave of auto exports on the back of their own overcapacity. We saw a similar playbook in the China shock of the early 2000s that harmed our manufacturing communities, and this administration is determined we will not see a second China shock. That means putting safeguards in place now before a flood of unfairly underpriced Chinese autos undercuts the ability of the U.S. auto sector to compete fairly on the global stage. So this month, we finalized a 100% tariff on EVs imported from China, and many of our allies have joined us in this effort, including the European Union and most recently Canada. And of course, that's particularly important because we're going to need to work with our partners, Canada and Mexico, to address China's overcapacity in EVs as we look to the midterm review of the USMCA in 2026. And today, I'm pleased to announce we are taking important new action to guard against safety and security risks on connected cars. Connected cars have the ability to exchange data with other cars, your personal devices, America's infrastructure, our power grid, and auto manufacturers. The computer systems that power our cars can control the vehicle's movements and collect sensitive driver and passenger data, and the cameras and sensors can record detailed information about our country and citizens. So we need to make sure the technology systems that connect our cars are trusted and secure. Consumers should be able to enjoy the many benefits associated with connected vehicle systems, such as promoting safety, assisting drivers with navigation, and reducing emissions. But how we source these technologies has important implications for our national security, safety on our roads, and the resilience of our supply chains. China has taken steps to dominate the software and hardware systems associated with connected cars. But connected vehicles with Chinese software and hardware could expose the American people to unacceptable risks of misuse of their sensitive data or interference by malicious actors. That's why today the Department of Commerce proposed to prohibit Chinese software and hardware from being used in connected vehicles on U.S. roads. It's worth noting that China already requires all foreign vehicles and battery makers to rely on only Chinese software and hardware as a condition of operating in China. And third, we're investing in the auto workers and small suppliers that are the backbone of the U.S. auto sector. Today, we're announcing new resources for workers through the new Michigan Workforce Hub, which we launched this spring to expand pathways to EV and battery manufacturing jobs, particularly for underserved communities here in the state. Today, in partnership with the state of Michigan, we're announcing a new pilot program to train workers in Wayne County for over 140 high-quality jobs in the auto supply chain, partnering with local auto employers to enable workers to earn a paycheck while they train, which is a major barrier for so many people who want to enroll in these programs. In addition, the Department of Energy's Battery Workforce Challenge program is announcing over $1 million to fund curriculum, equipment, internships, and job placements in community colleges, high schools, and training institutions across the state. Henry Ford College, for instance, will receive $200,000 in seed funding to establish a state-of-the-art battery and electric vehicle training center. That builds on our Good Jobs executive order that ensures the benefits of all these federal grants and investments continue to accrue to workers and communities. The projects receiving domestic conversion grants, for instance, are going to create nearly 3,000 new good-paying auto jobs and retain another 15,000 high-skilled union jobs. As a condition of those grants, manufacturers commit to support their local workforces. For instance, Bluebird, which is a grant recipient, pledged to expand training programs in local high schools and invest in childcare for working parents. And ZF North America is using their conversion grant to retain and retrain 536 workers, mostly UAW workers, at its facility in Marysville, Michigan, to produce components to electrify vehicles. Last year, the UAW secured record contracts with the Big Three, and since that time, other auto producers across the United States have also moved to good wages and good jobs. And today, more workers than ever are enjoying the benefits of joining unions. Our auto workforce also includes hundreds of small and medium-sized suppliers, and Michigan has more than any other state. This summer, Vice President Harris came here to Detroit to announce more than $100 million from across the federal government to support these suppliers. That included millions of dollars from the Conversion Grants Program for states to make awards to small and mid-sized suppliers, because we heard from officials and suppliers here in Michigan that smaller manufacturers need help to tap into large federal grant programs. So that's what we're providing. And today, we're pleased to announce a commitment from Monroe Capital in the Drive Forward Fund of up to $1 billion to provide low-cost financing for small and mid-sized suppliers, and a $9 million Treasury grant to help suppliers retool for electrification right here in Michigan. So let me close with this. Just as our economic resilience and national security have been tied to the strength of our auto sector for the past century, it's critical the U.S. auto sector is positioned to lead for the next century. Today's announcements underscore our commitment to auto communities and to the competitiveness and safety of the U.S. auto sector. They're part of a forward-looking strategy that leverages the strengths of American manufacturing and the talents of American auto workers here in Detroit, throughout Michigan, and across the country. Thank you. And with that, we're going to turn to a conversation with Glenn.
So when you sit down with somebody like this, you wonder what you're going to talk about at lunch. And we talked about soccer. Because you played soccer in college.
That is actually not the main reason we talked about soccer.
Well, that's not, because
I was a very poor soccer player.
But we have a common interest.
Absolutely.
So I follow Crystal Palace in South London, and you follow?
I am a Man City fan, which I know is not a fan favorite.
It's tough. I know there's a Liverpool fan here, Dex, today, too. So we talked about you. And we also talked about Detroit City Football Club, which you didn't know about, so we're proud of that. So getting into it today, we have a few things in common, we found out, too. We were both born in Germany, which we didn't know. We both studied economics, although mine didn't go quite as far as yours. But I did get an undergrad in it. But I think the most important thing, and I heard you talk to the students about it, is we both do mission-based work. So talk to us about that mission and what that means to you when it pertains to our auto industry.
Yeah, so I would say that one of the things that is most motivating to me in all the jobs I've done is seeing the effect on people, on communities, and in particular lifting up the possibilities, the economic opportunities that they have, either to start a small business, get a great job, raise their families, buy houses. And one of the things that I've come back to time and time again in my career, really starting with one of my very first jobs, is how important the auto industry is here in Detroit, here in Michigan, and to our country. And so for me, the ability during this administration, with a president that is so committed and a vice president that is so committed to this industry, it's been incredible to be able to work as closely as we have with the U.S. auto sectors. I was just talking earlier, we have 4 people here from my team. They have been here more than 5 times in this year alone. They spent a huge amount of time talking to auto suppliers, auto manufacturers, auto workers, Michigan officials, because we have so much ability to work together now to really reimagine that whole supply chain and to position ourselves for the future.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you to the team. They've been in our office several times, and we appreciate the collaboration. So let's take a step back real quick. I'm not going to ask you about policy or anything, but there's been a lot of ups and downs with the economy. But the indicators are pretty good right now, and as we head into the fourth quarter and we look at next year, just your thoughts generally on where we're at.
Yeah, so I think what I would say is we just passed a major milestone this past week. You know, we have now seen inflation round trip, basically. It soared during the height of the pandemic, shipping disruptions, supply chain disruptions, and then, of course, with Putin's invasion of Ukraine, gas prices went up, food prices went up. Well, today, gas prices are around $3.15 in much of the country. And there are a lot of states where gas prices are now back below $3. So it's a major accomplishment. Of course, we saw interest rates, the Federal Reserve actually lowering interest rates for the first time in 2.5 years in recognition that inflation has now come back very close to its pre-pandemic levels. During that time, unemployment has actually stayed consistently at among its lowest levels. In fact, I think we have the lowest unemployment rate of any administration in 50 years. We've seen the creation of 16 million jobs. We were talking about the jobs created here in Michigan alone. And real incomes have gone up. Even with the price increases we saw, people have, on average, more wealth and higher incomes, more purchasing power. The flip side of that is housing is still a huge affordability challenge. We're just not building enough houses. So looking forward, really critical to build millions of new homes. The Vice President has talked a lot about how important it is to do that. And also we need to make sure that it's affordable to raise a family and it's affordable for parents who want to work to get childcare. So those are challenges, I think, looking ahead.
And bringing it right to the auto industry, I got the fact sheet last night or this morning. I've been in this industry a couple of years. The list of commitments from, I'll start at the state level, from the governor's office, from the Labor and Economic Opportunity Office, but really from the federal government. It's unprecedented. It's quite a list. And they really address just about everything but housing. But one of the things that's important is they do address structural underlying things that the industry workers need, and at every tier. Can you talk about how your team sorts through that and gets to what needs to be done?
So I think the first most important thing is that we have a very open set of channels to hear from auto manufacturers, suppliers, training institutions, unions, other workforce institutions, so that we can understand exactly where the pain points are and try to address them. And we do have this incredible set of investment laws between bipartisan infrastructure law, CHIPS and Science, and Inflation Reduction Act. All of them have provisions that are really helpful to the auto industry, but we need to work closely with the governor's office here in the state, with members of the congressional delegation, and importantly with industry and labor to figure out how to target those structural challenges. Now, workforce is a key one. That is why we created an automotive and battery workforce hub here in Michigan, because we really need to help people identify these jobs and then have standardized curricula reaching back to high school level, so that people in high schools who may not want a 4-year degree can see there are these great opportunities, creating more registered apprenticeships, which are models that are just as skilled. You know, they can be 4-year apprenticeships, but you learn as you earn. So for a lot of students, it's just a much more attractive way of getting skilled for a career. And also hearing from small suppliers how important it is. It's harder for them to get access to capital. It's harder for them to get access to federal grants because it's very complicated. They're small. And so that's why we decided to work through state set-asides in the case of the conversion grants, because we know local officials can make those connections in ways that will be much more effective at getting that money to businesses.
But I'm glad you mentioned the small suppliers, and one of the things they don't have is they don't even have visibility. They got their head down. The big companies are here. In fact, Ford's here today, and they have good visibility and they have the connections in D.C. But as you go down the tier, and we have literally thousands of those companies, here in Michigan, they just don't have that visibility, and they're also caught in the middle on a lot of things. Right now, the deceleration of the EV demand curve has taken its toll on the supply market. So there's a pinch there, and so I appreciate the commitment to the small companies, because I don't think people, and I guess I would ask you in Washington, do they understand how deep? I know our federal and state legislators know this, but do they understand how pervasive this industry really is across our economy?
So I think I would say it is certainly true for the president, the vice president. It's a huge focus for them. I will say the vice president is very, very focused on small business and connecting small businesses to opportunity. That's why she came here earlier in this year to announce this big set of commitments, and is very excited with the Drive Forward Fund we're announcing today, as well as the Treasury Michigan-specific grants for small suppliers. And of course, the president has a long-standing commitment to this industry and commitment to manufacturing generally. We do reach out to try to make sure we're in contact with some of the groups that represent small suppliers, because we know they need special assistance connecting to those resources. And so we've put a lot of time and energy into that. But those are 275,000 jobs that really matters that are at these small suppliers. And as you said, hundreds of these small businesses that are essential to the auto industry.
And they're in every community in Michigan, everyone. So let's switch gears, and you touched on it a little bit, and talk about EVs in China. And I'd like to put it in the context of one company. There's many in the context of BYD. You talked about the tariffs. Consul General Bird from Canada is here. He and I talked the other day about it. The EU's wrestling with it. So this is the short-term solution. But you touched on it. But can you talk about how we're going to have to work on this together? We are up against a country that is state-driven capitalism. But at the same time, we have these open markets that are very interconnected. How do we work this through together, particularly on this continent?
Yeah, so this is a big challenge, but we are much better equipped for this challenge today than I think was the case when China first flooded our markets with imports in other sectors. First, we, with today's announcement, completely recognize and have investigated the potential national security risks. Today's cars are like computers on wheels. They are constantly connecting with the built environment, with other cars, with our personal devices, and that is only going to grow as more assisted driving features advance. And those are fantastic benefits for safety, for communication, for so many reasons for our consumers, but they have risks. Those same kinds of hardware and software systems can literally stop cars, direct cars to where they're going, collect and abuse personal data. And that's why the Commerce Department proposed rule today is so significant. We've never used ICTS authority before. This is a very significant change, and it basically says that we will not allow cars driving on U.S. roads if they are using Chinese software and hardware systems with a short transition period. So we think that is very important from a national security point of view. We also are very focused on the competition aspect and making sure that our manufacturers can compete fairly. We know China has built up massive overcapacity in EVs due to a whole host of policies, including technology transfer, forcing our cars in many cases to form JVs. And now that overcapacity is being dumped on global markets, and we're seeing in places like Europe exports growing at double-digit rates. That's not happening here, and we are, the president, the vice president, determined that's not what we're going to see here. That's why they put in place these high tariffs, and Canada follows suit for the same reasons. But as you say, because we have such an integrated North American autos market, we need to work with Canada and Mexico. We have an opportunity in the review of the USMCA, and I think together we can work to make sure that the North American auto sector is able to compete and win globally.
And we do have companies, too, we talked about this, that do business in China, too. So there's that wrinkle, too. A lot of business in China that are based here. But kind of going a little bit deeper, I visited BYD about 13 years ago in Shenzhen, and it was nothing to write home about. So if you'd have told me that today they would have had 7 ocean liners that each carry 7,000 vehicles, shipping vehicles around the world, are building plants in Eastern Europe, and are building a plant in Mexico, we're in conversations with, we have the review coming up of the USMCA, but we're talking to the government now. Obviously, I know we're talking to Canada.
We're already in conversation with officials in Mexico, and they share our concerns about China using Mexico as a platform to transship into the United States at artificially low tariffs. I think we can do a lot cooperatively because our interests, I think, are just very well aligned in all the conversations we've had so far. All 3 North American countries have an interest in ensuring that there's fair competition, and you cannot compete fairly with a country that has engaged in this much technology, forced technology transfer, IP theft, and regulations and barriers that really are intended to favor unfairly underpriced cars from China.
And we did see this with Japan, and we saw it with Korea. We perhaps might see a China-based company want to build in this country at some point too, but it'll have to be on different terms.
Yeah, so I think it will be very much with a set of safeguards that we are putting in place now before we confront these problems. And the whole point, I think, for the president, the vice president, is to provide choice. They want consumers to have, American consumers to have the choice, whatever kind of car they want to drive, whether it be an electrified vehicle, a hybrid, a gas-powered. But when Americans do choose electric vehicles, we want to make sure that they choose an American vehicle, not a Chinese vehicle.
Okay. Labor. So our president has been very clear about his position with labor. You know, we went through some very difficult negotiations in the fall, but labor has to be a partner in this. And there's an active dialogue there too.
Absolutely. So we have worked very closely both with the UAW and the Big Three as we forge ahead with these really important programs that are designed to secure the electric vehicle supply chain from end to end, because we want to make sure it's American workers that have these great jobs. We want to make sure American workers have the ability to retrain, just as we want to make sure that these factories have a chance to retool. And that's why we see some of our domestic conversion grants, we really see those going hand in hand. We think that good investments and good jobs go hand in hand, and the grants that we have done so far, you know, are affecting thousands of workers, giving 15,000 workers the chance to retrain and 3,000 workers a chance to move into this industry for the first time. So we see our labor interests and manufacturing interests very aligned, and the set of grants and incentives that we are providing helps to support that alignment.
And speaking of those grants, last week there were some one of which went to the Eagle Mine in the Upper Peninsula near my hometown, And I remember when that mine was set up, it was very controversial, but it's become a model. But it's the only nickel mine in the country right now, and that's not going to work when we look at, and of course, battery technology is changing with LFPs and things like that, but we have to develop this end to end. It's something we have to commit to, and it takes time.
It really does take time. I mean, we're very excited about the grant to the Eagle Mine and to having here in Michigan domestic mining of nickel. Nickel's so important in the EV supply chain. And as I said earlier, we now are on track to be a major producer of lithium. We just really weren't even on the map a few years ago. So these grants and these investments are really making a difference. But for mines, they need to go through a permitting process at the federal level, at the state and local level, because there are environmental considerations, there are community considerations. And we are trying to help companies move through that process by streamlining, creating sort of broad permits wherever possible, where there are certain types of activities that we know have been shown elsewhere not to have environmental negative consequences. We want to create exclusions for all of the projects that are using those kinds of processes, for instance. So we are doing everything we can to have a shorter environmental review process and to help companies get through the federal level, the state level, the local level with a single point of contact and a partnership model. But it is going to take time.
Good news. Well, I've got a lot more questions, but we're out of time, so I'm going to ask Terry to come up for the lightning round. Thank you very much, and please join me with it.
Okay, we've got some questions here, Lael. Glenn knows this well. Talent drives everything. And what are your thoughts on making sure that we're getting our people ready to compete and build lives through good jobs?
Yeah. So, look, I think this is one of the biggest things that we can do to compete and win globally in the future is to make sure that we reach back even to the middle school level. You know, I've talked to some districts where they are kind of explaining manufacturing jobs to kids in middle school because, you know, by the time they get to high school, they already have preconceived notions about what a good job is. And so some kids really get excited, and we are very much focused on creating pathways that reach into the high school level. We're working on a standardized manufacturing curriculum that I'm hoping that we'll be able to roll out soon. We've spent millions of dollars with business and labor on registered apprenticeship programs. Again, these are earn as you learn types of programs, highly skilled. We need a ton of electricians, for instance, you know, 4 to 5 year programs, but that lead to a good middle class job that has security and retirement and real pride associated with it. So those are the kinds of things we're doing, and very much we need to work with business so we are training for actual jobs.
That's great. Thank you for that. You chair the White House Competition Council. Can you talk about the work that that council does?
Yeah, so White House Competition Council is really intended to look at every mechanism we might have to increase competition. And that's important for consumers because it helps to lower costs. I'll give you an example of that in a second. But it's also been a major focus. We were talking earlier about small suppliers. Small businesses really care a lot about having a more competitive business environment so they can really compete with the largest businesses. On the consumer side, I'll just mention a few things that has been important in the competition area. One of them, for instance, has been on making sure that airlines don't charge parents special additional fees just to sit next to their young kids, when I think both the parents and the rest of the passengers really would prefer that those parents sit next to their young kids. And so we've, through the work on the Competition Council, all of the airlines are now no longer charging family seating fees. All of the airlines are now providing refunds without going through a really long process that, you know, usually tests the patience of most American flyers. when they cancel a flight. So there are a whole variety of areas. We talk about them as junk fees, where increasing competition actually makes it cheaper to go to things like live events.
You mentioned the importance of vehicle choice for consumers. How do you respond to people when they say that the administration has an EV mandate?
Yeah, so I really think, I've heard this, I think it's complete nonsense. I don't know what they're talking about. We really see ourselves as creating more choice. The reality is that unless we work to really invest in the electrified vehicles supply chain from end to end, American consumers will have fewer choices. They will not be able to buy cars potentially other than Chinese EVs. That would be less choice, not more choice. So our focus is on making sure that American consumers can drive whatever they choose. But for those who want to choose to drive electric vehicles, we want to make sure there are competitive American models, that the American supply chain is strong and resilient, and that they really have options there.
How does the state of the economy translate to the state of small businesses across the country?
Yeah, so we spend a huge amount of time, I certainly do, when I travel around the country talking to small businesses, because small businesses are so vital in terms of kind of anchors in local communities, job providers, you know, a lot of innovation taking place in small business. What's interesting is after the pandemic really tested small businesses and was a very, very difficult time, we have seen a record 19 million business applications, record number of small businesses under this administration. I think the Vice President and the President are very proud of that. And when you talk to these small businesses, they are getting new opportunities because of these new investments that are being made under the Investing in America laws. And they're also able to provide more job opportunities, opportunities to local employees, because some of the child tax credit money that came early in the recovery, as well as some of the health insurance subsidies. All of those things enable our small businesses to thrive in this economy.
There's still a significant housing shortage. How can we get a handle on that, and what are the economic implications?
Yeah, so housing is a huge affordability challenge, and that needs to be our next big focus. We have tried during this administration to get Congress to work with us on renewing tax credits for low-income housing. 95% of our affordable housing in this country was built with low-income housing tax credits, and they are vital. Unfortunately, that bill that would have created another 200,000 units was blocked, unfortunately. But I think we can work together. We must work together on a bipartisan basis. And both the President and the Vice President talked about committing to 3 million new affordable homes being built. The interest rate environment, now that inflation challenge is really receding, that a more favorable interest rate environment will also be good for residential construction. But the reality is, I think we need both to have a federal level, state level, and private sector response to get our housing supply up to what the needs are, which in turn will bring down rents and house prices.
Americans are still paying 2 to 3 times as much as other countries for prescription drugs. How do we get that under control?
Yeah, so this is a huge area where I think we look enviously at our neighbors, our Canadian neighbors to the north. It just doesn't make any sense for Americans to be paying 2 to 3 times as much for a prescription drug as somebody right across the river here in Windsor. So what we did in the Inflation Reduction Act, and this is something both the Vice President and the President think is incredibly significant, is we brought down the price of insulin, for instance, for seniors from hundreds of dollars a month to $35 a month, and that makes a huge difference for millions of Americans on insulin. They also now, because of the Inflation Reduction Act, seniors starting next year will have their out-of-pocket drug costs capped at $2,000. For some seniors, that's literally $10,000 in savings each year. And Medicare, for the first time, will be able to negotiate drug prices just as the Veteran Administration has done for many years and as many foreign countries are able to do. Our hope is that in coming years, a broader legislative authority will be passed that will allow those same kinds of savings to be made available to more Americans.
The U.S. is building resiliency in the semiconductor and electronics industries. From your seat, can you share your thoughts on where we are to date and where it's headed?
Yeah, well, I think that is one of those areas.
It's cutting out.
This is cutting out. Can you hear this now? Is that working? You want me to use this? Is this better? Okay. So I would say on semiconductors, you know, it's incredible how much we fell behind in terms of manufacturing semiconductors. You know, we basically invented the semiconductor here. We started as a kind of leading global manufacturer. We retained design sort of preeminence, but we saw all of the manufacturing of leading edge semiconductors essentially move mostly to Asia because of a lot of government subsidies there. So under the CHIPS and Science Act, for the first time, we are now seeing that the leading edge semiconductor manufacturers are coming here to the U.S. or investing here in the U.S., and it's now projected that before, less than 10% of that manufacturing of leading-edge semiconductors was projected to be here in the U.S. Now it's anticipated that by the end of this decade, 30% of that manufacturing will be here in the U.S. And that's important. It's important, for instance, on artificial intelligence. You know that the most advanced, both memory and logic chips, are needed in massive numbers for training and the operations of frontier AI models. So having that leading edge manufacturing here in the U.S. is really important, not just to the automobile sector and to our defense sector, but also to leading areas like AI.
Outstanding answers, very insightful. Thank you for that. Now we're going to have a little bit of fun with a lightning round. Okay, you can't come to the Detroit and not talk about your first car. What was your first car?
So I was given a complete clunker that had been in a massive accident that was like a Buick sedan because I was poor, and I was so thrilled to have something that had an engine and wheels. It was great.
And what was your first paying job?
My first paying job was in food service. I used to get up at 5 a.m. and work in a cafeteria.
Fill in the blank. I wish I was better at
snowboarding.
Good one. What website do you visit most often?
Premier League.
Advice you would give to your 25-year-old self?
Yeah, I think I would probably tell my 25-year-old self to just like really enjoy the moment, because 25 is a great age and it doesn't come back around again.
Awesome. That's great. And I'm going to turn it back over to Steve. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. So let me wrap up here, Lael. We love having you here. We want you to come back again, but here's why I like you. They served her a really healthy grilled chicken lunch, and she said, I don't want that, just give me the dessert. So we love that about you. Thank you. Let's have you come back another time as well, please, for your third visit. Glenn, you did an outstanding job. Thanks for being with us. You always do. Thank you. Terry, you're as smooth as they come. Thank you. I always love having you on stage here as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, just two quick favors. One is that I've got to get Lael right to WJR straight there for her radio interview, so just allow us to get right through if you don't mind. And the second favor is just to tell your friends and colleagues to join the Detroit Economic Club, because they're a really fun group of people. So, on time, every time, this meeting of the Detroit Economic Club is now adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
We are bringing this to you as part of our partnership with the Detroit Economic Club. We'll hear from more big names in the next few weeks, and we'll have them for you here on Local 4 Plus. Thanks so much for watching.